Alright, so this is just kind of what I would have done. Delete that. What I would have done for Fallout 4 story, because I thought Fallout 4 was a otherwise mediocre game in terms of its story. As a Fallout game, again, mediocre. As a RPG, bland, boring. But as a game itself, not bad. It was mostly good in the shooting aspect, the action. The settlement building was good. The weapon modifications good. The armor modifications also good. But this is just kind of my little take on the story. Think of it as a fanfic, if you will. If you don't like it, hey, whatever. That's your cup of tea, or not your cup of tea. So this is just me giving what I would have done. So I'm going to start with what we do know. So off the bat, we got our minor factions. I was going to do this with images, but I figured it's just easier if I type things out. So I'll probably leave some timestamps where it's like, all right, so you already know what's going on, so let me just skip to what I think this guy's gonna do. And also saying that this does contain some spoilers, not anything too major, but if you're like, nope, I don't want anything to do with spoilers, then stay away from this video. If you don't mind a little bit, then here you go. So off the bat, we have Raiders, we have I'll just call them mutants. We have Super Mutants, Gunners, which are basically your new Talon Company guys, because Talon Company's not in this game. I guess for New Vegas, they're more or less the enhanced raiders, the more tough raiders. I guess for New Vegas, they had like the Vipers and stuff like that. So slash your Vipers or Fiends or whatever. Well, Fiends were kind of the raiders. Let's see, what else did we have? We had the Children of Adam, which they were manufactured, had radiation weapons, stuff like that. So those are all your minor factions, and then of course you have your various settlements and stuff like that. So your major factions are the Minutemen, the Institute, which I don't care if I spell this wrong or right or whatever, you know what it says, Brotherhood of Steel, and of course the Railroad. Now, this is actually a relatively small list when you compare it to, let's say, New Vegas that had a crap ton of minor factions. It only had three major factions. That was Mr. House, the NCR, and Caesar's Legion. Then you just had an onslaught of minor factions here and there from the Fiends, the Gunrunners, Caravan, or Cassidy's Caravan. You had the Crimson Caravan. And then you had the Vipers, which were a subgroup of Raiders. And then I think you had the Jackals and stuff like that. And then, of course, you had the Fiends, and they had or not the Fiends, the Nightkin, they had their own various things. So off the bat, your Minutemen are basically your good guys. The Institute are your bad guys, although it's questionable if they're bad. Brotherhood of Steel are kind of their own thing, their own deal. And then, the Railroad are more or less good guys if you're a synth/synth sympathizer. That's a lot of that. Could have worded that better, but there we go. There's what we have. And I probably spelled that wrong, but whatever. So that's what we have now. What I would do is I would keep the Gunners as your minor faction, your stronger Raiders, if you will. I would, of course, keep the Raiders, the Mutants, and all that jazz. They would have their own thing. But I would actually make the Children of Adam one of the major factions. And the reason for that is we need a centralized attack. Actually, we're going to make this gray, similar to how Fallout 4 has it set up. So Minutemen are still going to be your good guys, although I've fleshed them out a bit more. Although their gray area would be that they're against anything that's trying to change the Commonwealth. So they're against the Institute. They're against the Brotherhood of Steel because they see them as like invaders, if you will. So think of the Minutemen as kind of like the local police, and they kind of want to keep the Commonwealth its own independent thing, and they see the Institute, the Brotherhood of Steel, and the Railroad. Well, the Railroad they're kind of okay with because the Railroad's not trying to push their agenda into the whole of the Commonwealth. They're just doing their own thing, and then the Minutemen are like, whatever. Just keep your sense away from us, and we're good. So off the bat, let me put some spaces in between here. Not too many, obviously. So, let's see. They are anti Brotherhood of Steel / Institute. And then, of course, they're anti-Raiders, which the Raiders would be their main adversary, which I'll annotate there with A. So they're anti those, and then they are pro. Let me just zoom out a bit there. All right, so pro. Well, actually, they're neutral with the Railroad. So the Railroad and them, they're all right. They don't bother with each other. Of course, the Institute, Brotherhood of Steel, that's a give me that they're anti each other. Now, the Brotherhood of Steel, I would make some changes in that. There would be the Brotherhood of Steel, and then the Outcasts would actually be a growing faction because I know a lot of people were not big on um, the new approach that Fallout 3 had with the Brotherhood of Steel, where they're all like, "Yeah, we're the good guys. We're gonna help everybody." People preferred the more they're not evil, but they're not exactly the good guys that are going to come in and save the day. I like that idea. So the Outcasts aren't really going to call themselves the Outcasts anymore. They're going to consider themselves the true Brotherhood of Steel. So it's kind of like more of a homage to the old school fans that like the old school Brotherhood of Steel. And then you have the modern day Brotherhood of Steel. Now, this group's going to be led by Sarah Lyons, who unfortunately, or for whatever reason, dies in between Fallouts 3 and 4. It says she gets killed in combat or whatever, so she's going to represent her father's ideals and stuff like that. And then they'll be led by Markson, so he's going to be like, no, Lyons was wrong, blah, blah, blah. Sarah's whatever. Now, these two factions don't butt heads directly because they still consider each other, we're still brothers in arms. We just have different philosophies. But Markson has a more militant ideal in that regard, and he is basically saying, you know what, we need to take them out somehow, whether it's converting them all to our side, assassinating Sarah Lyons, but we need to get the Brotherhood of Steel back in the way it's supposed to be. And you could say that Sarah Lyons is too idealistic in her views, where she's too trusting that things start to happen, and so people within her chapter of the Brotherhood of Steel start to question what's going on here. Now, the Institute aren't going to be these questionable bad guys. What they're going to be are people trying to rebuild the wastes in their own methods. And the way they're going about this is that they see the children of Adam as a threat, and they're going to actually be led by a ghoul who we'll call Bill. I'm not going to give him some ominous, epic, badass name or whatever. He's just going to be a simple guy named Bill. Now, Bill's story is going to be this. He's going to be a ghoul who saw his family die, so saw his family slowly decay into radiation, so his family just slowly died to radiation, and they became feral ghouls because they just got too exposed, so he's now traumatized by this. And if you remember in the glowing sea, there was that missile silo, so we're going to say that missile silo never fired its missiles. So missile silo active, still full. So you have the children of Adam led by a ghoul named Bill, who's like, I'm the result of the what it's going to give me, but I feel purified, blah blah blah. So they look at him, they're like, oh my god, he's like undead looking, but he's like, no, listen to me, I'm the ideal thing of what you should become. So all these children of Adam are basically exposing themselves to radiation so that they too can become ghouls. I feel like the children of Adam should have been like ghouls that are like, I'm immortal, I've achieved godhood, so now I'm, what Adam wants me to be. So Bill's influencing the children of Adam and all that other jazz. Actually, let me edit some things here. Page layout. Control A. I'm going to change that so that way I have more room to work with. So I'll recap this because I know I'm bouncing all over the place. So the Institute is anti-Children of Adam because they see the Children of Adam as the biggest threat, because Children of Adam want to activate all the nukes. They want to basically launch all the remaining nukes out and about so that everybody will be turned into ghouls, or the radiation will just increase so much. And the reason why Bill is doing this is he sees it as an injustice, because he's basically against the world. He's anti-Enclave, but they're gone. He sees the Brotherhood of Steel as the remnants of the government. He sees the Institute as a science division of the government. Basically, he's just out to make everything and everyone as miserable as he was when he saw his family die to radiation, become ferals. Now, his family is still there. He keeps his family locked in a cage because he thinks that there's maybe a chance that he can reverse everything, but he keeps this hidden from the children of Adam. He doesn't let them know that, hey, over time, you could become feral, so he keeps his family secret. AKA, nobody knows about him except him, and he keeps log entries that you, as the player, will eventually find. As for the minor, I'll get into the minor factions here in a bit, but, so you have the children of Adam, they're trying to do all their thing. The Institute wants to stop the Adamites, as I'm going to call them, And they're going to do this with a synth army because they don't have the resources or the manpower to take them on. But the Minutemen are ignoring them. The Brotherhood of Steel are too busy fighting each other, and the Railroad is too anti-Institute, even though it's a big misunderstanding. So you could think of the Railroad as self-righteous good guys, if you will. So they want to make a synth army. Of course, this goes downhill because they want to make an army, but also want them to fit in with a peaceful society once the fight is done and over. The problem with this, of course, is that they don't know how to reprogram them. So reprogramming issues ? So basically, it's like, all right, we've programmed them to fight, but how do we reprogram it? And eventually, it's getting to a point now where the synth army can almost function on its own, to where the Institute would basically turn into synths, and all the scientists and stuff would be wiped out. So we're going to keep the original story, and that is they abduct the child of the main peeps, so they can use the best possible DNA. And the child parents are, the father was an army soldier and the mother was a lawyer, so it's military experience and intellect combined into two things. And the Institute says, well, maybe if they inherit these kind of genetics, or if we can kind of pass this on to the child, or the child can pass it on to other children, we'll have basically the brains that we need to make sure that the reprogramming issues won't happen. So they'll be able to take these strong ass soldiers they've built that are going to go against the Children of Adam, which composes of ghouls, the Children of Adam themselves, feral ghouls that Bill keeps locked up and just kind of unleashes them on settlements and stuff. That he sees as obstacles to his thing. So your main antagonist is going to be Bill, who's just basically a ghoul who's pissed off at the world, and the Institute wants to stop him. But by doing what they're doing, they're creating a lot of fear and paranoia, but they don't care to address. They're like, it doesn't matter what the world thinks about us. We just want to stop them. So they have that hero mentality of they don't care about the recognition. They just want the threat to be eliminated. But by doing what they're doing, they're making people like go, what the fuck, And they don't think they need anyone's help, so they're not going out of their way to say, no, look, listen, here's what we're doing. So the Railroad, you could say, are actually being played by Bill, in that he's like, yes, Bill came to them and said, Bill says that, yes, the Institute is evil. Help me stop them. And so your interactions with them would be like, yeah, maybe Bill's right, maybe not. And then you try to convince the Railroad that, hey, the Institute's trying to stop this dude from doing something pretty fucked up. He's trying to basically further destroy the world than it already is. Because, they show you the pre-war thing. It's like, all right, here's the pre-war world. Here's what we had. And, they lost all that, but now all we have left is this barren wasteland full of mutated creatures and stuff, but still, it's the world we got. It's the world we got to live with. Bill wants to just take everything away from everybody. It's like he has no reason to exist, and he just wants revenge on everybody that has any kind of pre-war notions, like the Brotherhood of Steel and all that stuff. So the Railroad is just a matter of convincing them that, yes, Bill is right, or no, Bill is wrong, and the Institute are in the right, and that they're trying to stop, Cataclysm from just destroying the world. And then the Brotherhood of Steel fits in that they would be anti-Institute because of the synth thing. So regardless, Sarah Lyons' group you can convince to join with them. Markson's Brotherhood of Steel would be like, no, the Institute and Children of Adam both have got to go. So that would basically be like a middle ground party, if you will. But Sarah Lyons is like, no, the Institute, maybe there is something to them, that maybe if we integrate them into us, we can use their technology for our own ends. So Sarah Lyons wants to basically bring in the Institute into the Brotherhood of Steel. So SL wants to, not join, but I will say absorb the Institute. I'll just call him the Inst. And then Markson wants to destroy them. So you have that going on. So, and then the Minutemen fit in that they're against the Children of Adam. Like they've heard about what's going on with them, so they're against them. Railroad, they're like, yeah, whatever. But again, they're anti-Institute, anti-Brotherhood of Steel. But the player character can convince the Minutemen to say, hey, the Institute's not so bad, or hey, Sarah Lyons isn't so bad. But Markson, he's gonna be like, no, we don't care to work with the locals. Now, I know a lot of this might be confusing, but there's a lot of nuances going on that makes an intriguing story because it's like, well, who do I join with? Who do I side with? And all this other stuff. Now, the way your minor factions would work is that, you have your mutants. They're more of a environmental threat than anything. They're a result of, the FEV virus. The gunners are your stronger raiders, and then, of course, you have the default raiders. But I would also add in slavers because I felt like Fallout 4 took the nice, safe, clean path because I felt like the Wasteland should have had some of this stuff because Fallout 3 had fucking children, slaves, prostitution. Hell, in New Vegas, you had an entire faction dedicated to drugs and keeping their slaves in their little area with drugs. So basically, they made them addicts and said, "Hey, you want your hits? Well, here you go, but you got to stay with us. Otherwise, who are you going to get your hits from?" So you would have slavers, and you could also, in theory, join them if you wanted to. If you wanted to be an evil character, you could join them. Same with the Raiders. You could join the Raiders and, kind of solidify yourself with a minor faction, maybe bring them into one of the major factions you join if there's anything to be had. Like, obviously, the Raiders and the Institute wouldn't get along. The Raiders and the Brotherhood of Steel wouldn't get along. The Minutemen could maybe see a chance to reform them. The Children of Adam might be able to see them as like, hey, exposable guinea pigs. Hey, let's just send out the pawns, let them do the fighting while we kind of chill back and just watch everything go to shit. The mutants would obviously maybe have something to do with helping out Bill. Like Bill comes to them and says, "Hey, you want more FEV? I've got it." So Bill would have more FEV for them, and he would get them to help him do his goal or get to achieve his goal, excuse me, by giving them FEV. So he's like, "All right, here's a freebie of FEV. Go use it on whoever you want." And there's more where that came from because I got it. Of course, he'd be lying his ass off. He just gave them the one thing and that's all that he has. So he's gonna be like, all right, so I gotta hope that that keeps them in line long enough for them to be useful to me. Not all the mutants would fall in line with this. You would still have your various bands running around doing their own thing, but otherwise the main groups would be like, yeah, we like this Bill guy. He's giving us FEV so we can make more of us. All right, so I needed a break there. I need a little water break. Blah blah blah. So your gunners would just be your stronger raiders, and yes, you could join them as well. Maybe even turn them into a major faction where you bring the raiders, slavers, and gunners all together for one big push. Now, obviously, the story would need not to be super long, but you could, interact with various factions, get to know each one, figure out which one you want to fit in with. So the main conflict stems from the Children of Adam versus the Institute. That is the main conflict. It's the Institute wanting to save what's left of the world, the Children of Adam wanting to destroy what's left of the world and build their quote unquote radiated utopia, which is complete bullshit that Bill put in their heads. Like, I'm not saying he's the founder. I'm just saying he's like this big guy that came along and said, "Hey guys, I got this idea. You want to hear me out?" And they're like, "All right, yeah, sure, why not?" And then he explains to them that he's immortal, blah blah blah. And they're like, "Yes, we want that. That way we can be one with Adam and all that other good shit." And of course, you have Bill using the super mutants, feral ghouls, using radiated creatures to basically take out settlements and stuff that he feels like are in the way of his goals. Like I say, there's a bunch of codes in this building that the settlements around, he would send in whatever to go take them out, or even super mutants to take them out, and he would go in, snag the codes, and be on his way. That way, if people looking at it were like, oh, some super mutants came in and killed everybody, well, that sucks. Even though in reality, it was Bill just pulling everybody's strings and saying, hey, I'm going to snag these codes, and I'm going to abscond with them, and get out of here, and nobody will be the wiser as to what I'm actually doing here. So that would leave the confrontation with Bill, in which case you would either convince him that he's wrong. If you're failing that, you just kill them or kill him and stop the nukes from launching, and then destroy the silos. And then from there, you resolve any other conflicts within the various major factions and stuff like that. Now, would I add in any minor factions? I would maybe give each settlement its own kind of individual thing. Like if you're more along the lines with the Minutemen, you just bring them all together into a unified commonwealth that drives off all the foreigners and stuff like that. The Children of Adam, you basically are like, yeah, hey, I'm converted. I'm gonna help Bill achieve his goals and all that other stuff. And then you kind of learn more about him that you wouldn't otherwise learn if you were against him, because you would only find out what you were able to through like logs and stuff like that. So you wouldn't be able to hear his personal story. And that is to say, Bill was not inherently evil. He was just driven insane by becoming a ghoul, seeing his family die, and becoming feral. So he saw his family both die and slowly become feral and stuff like that, or not die, but become super irradiated. and just turn into feral. So it's like what's left of his family is just an angry corpse that's just running around wanting to smash everything he can get his hands on. So he's just like completely detached from reality now because he's just so consumed with his grief. And then the Institute, of course, would be the against the Children of Adam because they're like, yeah, do you see what these guys are doing? We should probably do something about that. The Brotherhood of Steel would have been the guys to come in here and stop this, but they're too busy going at each other. And of course, if you play as the Brotherhood of Steel guy, you would take out the Institute, you would take out the Children of Adam after that. On the other hand, if you play as Sarah Lyons, you would probably work with the Minutemen, maybe even work a little bit with the Railroad, try to convince them that they're not, that hey, the Institute's not entirely bad. In fact, we're trying to bring them into us. Of course, the Institute would fight against that, and it's just a matter of convincing the two that maybe they could coexist without absorbing one another. Or you could even go to the route where it's like the Institute's like, hey, help us get the technology the Brotherhood of Steel has, and we'll totally sit you up here and you can be in charge of the Brotherhood of Steel or whatever. But you would work for us. In terms of the Brotherhood of Steel, you would own them. So there's all these nuances they could have made with these factions instead of this like great big misunderstanding between the Brotherhood of Steel, the Institute, and the Railroad. Because if you think about it, the Railroad thinks the Institute is evil, as does the Brotherhood of Steel. But the Railroad, for whatever reason, opposes the Brotherhood of Steel. Well, actually, it's because the Brotherhood of Steel wants to wipe out all the synths. And then the Railroad's convinced that, oh no, not all the synths are bad people. They're being enslaved by the Institute, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, the Institute is just trying to preserve humanity. Once all the radiation levels and everything else goes away, then they'll come back up, which is the wrong way of doing it. But it's all just one big fat misunderstanding. Because the Institute is not trying to take over the world like the Brotherhood of Steel thinks. They're not trying to enslave synths like the Railroad thinks. Because in the Institute's eyes, these things are machines. They're just programmed to think that they are human. That's just how they work. So, but with my take, I feel like I would just slap in this one guy who's manipulating all these people to just basically create total mayhem and chaos and just blow up the world. Then you have the various factions fighting amongst each other. So your normal expectations would be the Brotherhood of Steel comes in, saves the day. Well, the Institute could do that, but the Institute's too stubborn to work with anyone else because they feel like they're the only ones that can handle this. And then the Brotherhood of Steel's having their own internal struggle. So that leaves everything basically free for Bill to go around, do his thing. Now, as far as the whole finding your son deal, that would still exist, as I said, because they abducted the child for the best possible DNA. And let's just say they tried it with others, but the children either A, were not what they expected, or B, just they couldn't do it. They just weren't good enough, so they just kept trying, and then they finally found one. Then they can say that these Adamites have been planning this for a while. They're just trying to find enough nukes to destroy the world all at once, which they are very close to their goals because the nukes within the Boston area could do some serious damage to what's left of DC. They could destroy the Pentagon, which is I believe, the capital of the Brotherhood of Steel. I mean, they could just wipe out the entire East Coast. And what's to stop them from moving west to, let's say, an NCR and Caesar's Legion that have both basically just demolished each other, or you could say, the independent Vegas guy, he basically took that away from them, so now all three of them are sitting ducks because they're all exhausted from fighting a recent war, kind of a nod to New Vegas, thus making it canon. So that's just what I would do. This is my interpretation of how I think Fallout 4 should have gone. Again, it's totally just an idea I'm tossing out. I think Fallout 4's story was weak. Could have had more to it. Maybe had a more gray area and just kind of focus more on the whole the atom bomb type thing. Because if you think about what the story is trying to set up, is that the reason I think you should experience the pre-war world, and I would have given it more exposure than what Fallout 4 did, is that you see what you have and then you lose it and you're like, oh crap, we lost this paradise that we had, and now we're left with this, and it's miserable and stuff like that. But then there's this guy that's trying to take what's left of it away from everybody. Now we got to stop him. So it's all about this kind of having gratitude for what you have and remembering what you lost and making sure that that does not happen again. So it kind of ties into Ulysses' philosophy, is that people do not understand their history. Bill doesn't understand his history because what he's trying to do is just going to make it worse for everybody else, as opposed to this whole notion of revenge. It's completely made up in his head. What he's going to do is basically make the world full of people that think like him, because everybody's going to lose their family and everybody's going to be violent towards each other and stuff like that. But that's just what I would do. So let me know what you guys think down below. If you have your own ideas, if there's anything I should have expanded on, just leave a comment. Let me know what you guys thought. So, anyways, I'm Luca Blight, and I will see you all for more Let's Plays later on down the line.